Yeah, well, first of all, Alessandro, thanks for having me. This is all part of the presentation, but thanks for pointing it out. It's all part of the scheme. But Alessandro, nonetheless, thanks for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. And so I'm Finnish, so I'm really excited deep down. Like I don't show it, but trust me, I'm thrilled. I actually had prepared some jokes, and and I told my colleagues I have this one go-to joke that I always tell, and they were like, "For the love of God, whatever you do, don't tell that joke." So I'm not going to tell that joke. I'm only going to tell if anyone wants to come and talk to me afterwards. I can share the joke. It's not nasty or anything. It's really PG. But I can still continue. Let's continue nonetheless. So I arrived yesterday, and this is Cross Motion, Cross Innovation Conference. I actually had a soft landing yesterday. I took the ferry. I actually experienced a bit of cross motion when the boat was going a bit like, wah. So I was like, okay, that was a nice touch. Okay. Oh, no, not that fast. How do I? You didn't see that. Okay. So, regardless, whether you laugh with me or at me, I don't really care, as long as you feel that you are learning something within this 30 minutes, give or take. So before we go any further, my name is Miikka J Lehtonen. And I'm currently working as a visiting assistant professor in Aalto University School of Arts, Design and Architecture, and School of Business. So kind of split, 50-50 split. I moved back to Finland in the summer of 2017, but more details on what happened after or before that will follow in a minute. But yeah, do we have anyone in the audience who is practicing ballroom dancing? Anyone? Oh, there was one. Okay, yeah, you know what I'm talking about, right? Has anyone seen ballroom dancing in action? Okay, now we are talking. Perfect. So you know, two bodies moving in unison. That feels amazing, right? It's really beautiful to look at, even more fun to practice. So when we talk about design direction and common language, that's the kind of feeling I would like you to have. So that's how it feels. When we collaborate, I know it's a cliche, but I promise that we go beyond cliches in the next 26 minutes now. Okay. Do I need to point your way? No, okay. Yeah, so I'm not gonna go too far in my academic past, but just to give you an idea who is actually talking here. I defended my dissertation in May 16, 2014, Aalto University School of Business. Immediately afterwards, things got a bit heated, so I had to escape to Tokyo, Japan. And I spent more or less 3 years working at the University of Tokyo multidisciplinary unit called iSchool in the Faculty of Civil Engineering. So I spent 3 years there. And before that, there was a slight overlap. I was working as a postdoctoral researcher, also in Tokyo, but different university. And now, as I mentioned, School of Business and School of Arts, Design, Architecture. So point being that when I talk about collaboration across disciplines, I'm not telling about that. I'm not one of those bookworms as such, but I have been experiencing that myself, coming from, originally from political science, then business, design, engineering, so I wear many hats. Yeah. And at the moment, just obligatory research part, advertising. So I'm researching, or looking into visual research methods, multidisciplinary teamwork, design-driven organizations, game companies, looking at game companies from a business perspective, and Japan, quite broadly. I have some side projects also going on, looking at humor, visualizing orgasms, not separately, mind you, but that's not the focus today. Yeah, and most of my teaching, and I'm going to show some experiences or some examples that you might find interesting from my teaching experience in Aalto. So I work in a multidisciplinary teaching program called International Design Business Management, or IDBM for short. And no, it's not IMDb, and yes, it's an awful name, but for our defense, we were established in 1995, and things were quite different back then, but that makes us one of the oldest multidisciplinary programs in the world, which is very nice. Okay. In addition to different disciplines, I've been working in different places. So red dots being Finland, Denmark, Japan, the US. So I've been living and working in those countries for longer periods, and then teaching or doing research in Russia, India, China, and then I can't reach, you see the dotted line, right? So that's a boat from Portugal to Brazil. 7 years ago, our students organized a boat trip called Aalto on Waves. They said, like, 100 students, we want to have a different kind of learning experience, and we need teachers on board. So I was teaching business model course on a boat for 12 days. That was quite exciting. But again, just to give you some more flesh around the bones, that I have experience working across not only disciplines, but also cultures and geographies. Okay, so much for the soft landing. Now it's like time to get to the actual business. Like, Rittel and Weber's article, Dilemmas in a General Theory of Planning. Has anyone read this piece? Perfect. Couple of hands here and there. Okay, so this is an amazing piece, 1973, and although they originally talk about policy making, making a comparison between policy making problems and then civil engineering or physics problems being inherently different, this is still like super relevant even today, 2019, especially when you talk about creative endeavors. And when you think about it, like when we embark on creative inquiry to solve problems, whether they are huge problems or small problems, in the beginning we don't really, like we might not necessarily know what kind of an output are we going to produce, because it's open-ended, right? And we all know how that feels. You know, writer's block, empty canvas syndrome. There's a certain level of pain and anxiety, but also pleasure in that moment when you start exploring. And this is already what they were talking about in 1973. But still, when you think about it, passion to create something new, to see things in a new light, or to ignite the spark in others, these are all amazing causes. But especially in design, again, Buchanan, 1992. And I promise these are like the only academic citations, I think. So I'm going to keep these at minimum, but these are like really, really beautiful quotes that really capture what we are going to be talking about now. So the problem for designers is to conceive and plan what does not yet exist, just what we mentioned. And with wicked problems being complex in nature, difficult to define, pin down, they are always on the move, just like the creative process itself. They still need to be solved, right? But they don't have to be such grand challenges as global warming, poverty, or Finland winning the Eurovision Song Contest again. These are huge problems, and they require concerted efforts. But there are also smaller things that really require our attention. Okay, one more, but from World Economic Forum. It's a long one, but let me take you quickly or briefly back in time. It might be years or months or days, but think about your time spent in school. Did you acquire these skills? Critical thinking, perhaps, problem solving, persistence, kinda, collaboration. Who feels that they actually learned to collaborate in school? Well, that was a gamble. I was afraid everyone would raise their hands, but yeah, high five that. Okay, but that's not the point. Let's not dwell too much in the past, especially if the memories of school are not too pretty. But think about it. We have these grand challenges, we need to solve them, and at the same time we have this demand from World Economic Forum, other instances showing that we need to have vast array of skills. We need to possess or master so many skills. It's quite tricky, right? We need to learn. It's no longer only about learning to read or solving mathematical equations. It's really about solving grand challenges and knowing how to collaborate with different people. And trust me, for a Finn, collaborating with or even talking to others is a challenge. There's a funny story when I was working in Denmark. My colleagues and I, we had this after work, and I love Danes. I've heard Danish being spoken here so much, so like, fantastic. Anyway, afterwards, with colleagues, we are in a bar. I walk to the bar, looking at the menu, like the drink menu. I don't know what to drink. I'm just spending my time there, but not too long to make it look awkward. When this Danish woman approaches me and asks me in Danish, like, have you decided what you want to get? Obviously, there was something going on. I'm just, too tired to try to reply in my broken Danish. I reply in English, no. And she just looks at me like a bit astonished, like, okay, and then she walks away. So that's short, small talk in Finland. But so I learned in that moment that it's really reading books or learning collaboration from books takes you far, but it doesn't take you all the way. So you have to feel it in your body, just like ballroom dancing. And now we're at the main argument, kind of paving the way, warming up. So how do we create value for us, our stakeholders, and the society at large in a way that enables us to solve those challenges? And this has been there was really nice, this whole concept, it's called Sampo Yoshi, so Japanese concept, us, client, society, dating all the way back to Edo period Japan, so 1600s, 1700s, way back. So my colleague in Japan shared this story with me, and I think when you think about this, that when we collaborate and when we hit the spot between us, customers, society, that's when the magic happens in a way. Because we don't really solve those grand challenges if we don't have ownership, if we don't feel passionate about those challenges. And I have some examples on this, so I'm just not like throwing words in the air. And this is the cool part. We have seen so many amazing examples on success stories today. I'm going to share one failure. I'm going to expose myself to you. It actually feels amazing. We failed miserably, and it feels great to tell about that, because I think we learned so much about that. But we have realized that creating spaces and common ground between disciplines, whether you are at school or at workplace, doesn't matter. Same issues. And to make it easy and to prevent anyone from falling asleep, when you have sometimes presentations that kind of go like, I have 3 acts, so you can easily follow. So this is number 1, then you have 2nd and 3rd, and then it's going to end eventually, okay? Everyone is ready for this. Okay, enthusiasm, okay. So first act. Can you see does the red look okay in the back? How can we inspire people through education? Okay. So this is a journey that started in 2016, and basically we are aiming at transforming higher education so people would actually feel energized after they graduate. So not feeling like finally I get to work, but finally I get to put my skills to test. We don't rely that much on essays or learning by heart. It's more about doing things. And again, keeping in mind that in a way, we are training future graduates for all you company people there. So you can come and thank me later. That was a bit ballsy. Oh yeah, sorry, one more. So these are our students. You might have spoken with one of them. She's here today, Eileen. So as you can see, they are not paid actors. This is how they looked like when the course was done. Just quickly, so just to give some idea like what this is all about. So 3 iterations. Basically, it's about teaching people. This is the first course they take in the graduate program. So what do you teach when you bring people from business, design, technology together? You teach them how to work together. Otherwise, you end up fighting and clashing disciplines. So we are talking about a 3-week course, kind of extended design sprint, where people learn how to work together, but also revolving around a challenge that they must kind of, within that framework, they need to define their own challenge and solution to that. And if that's not enough, as a cohort, we are talking about 50, 60 students, they have to organize an event that is open for public. They sell tickets, so it's really kind of setting the bar high. 2016, the brief was redesign, reimagine restaurant experience. So as a cohort, they had 0 budget, I had 0 budget, we just felt passionate about this. When I gave the brief to the students, they were like, okay, thank you, looks like a great challenge. I was like, I had no idea how this would go. This was my first time teaching the course. But with this pop-up restaurant, they wanted to convey how does it feel, like the concept name was called Lost, and they wanted to convey how it feels to be lost as a foreigner in Finland through food, music, spatial design, really amazing. Then 2017, and you can see that the brief changes every time, so it's not kind of same every year, but we take examples from outside world. 2017, we took them to outer space. So students had to come up with future scenarios related to asteroid mining, colonizing Mars, space tourism, and again they had to organize an event open for public, tickets were sold. But I think 2018 was really the spot that we realized that how do you actually teach collaboration across disciplines. We framed the challenge in a way that we approached it from the Sustainable Development Goals perspective, looking at Helsinki and Copenhagen as the sites. And some of the teams, they had to deal with like no poverty, equality, reducing inequalities. And you can imagine, like, when we have this ethos in Helsinki and Copenhagen, that, we don't have any problems. We are like the Nordic model. We are showcasing or paving the way for others. Turns out it's not really the case. So the students felt really empowered by this, that they actually have an agency to do things. And imagine, when you have this sense of feeling, this sense already when you start your graduate studies, after 2 years, you're going to be a monster in a positive way. Quite strong colors, right? So what we are talking about is a movement, and we realized that we need to kind of rethink how we teach collaboration and how does it work. And one thing, again, with the design direction, we created a strong audio-visual identity. So we have this one. This is reflected in the website and everything. We printed vinyls actually for just because. Tote bags, sweaters, to kind of highlight that this is something that we believe in, and you can also be part of, and you can be part of, everyone can be part of, basically. And just to show that we are not nuts, so we'll be presenting in South by Southwest Education Sidetrack in a couple of weeks. We were shortlisted this year in Danish Design Award for Better Learning category, so I think we are doing something right, and it feels amazing. But the point that I would like to convey here, design direction. So when you think about collaboration, when you have like a clear direction, and in the students' case, it was the SDGs, so solving SDGs in Helsinki or Copenhagen, that helps in kind of coordinating your activities. And thinking about this in a company context, this would be kind of roughly design management. Same thing, like managing creative processes in companies. So that was the main bulk. But are you ready for the second one? Yes. Okay, now for the failure. It's actually super encouraging to see how many interesting and successful VR cases have been showcased here already, because we failed. So we didn't develop any VR collaboration, but one of the key elements in our course is that we have first 2 weeks, teams in Denmark, they join remotely. Everything works okay, streaming is okay, audio quality is okay. I bet it's not as good as here, but still okay. But one thing is because the teams, they have to organize an event together. And when you think about it, the venue is physically located in Helsinki. The teams in Copenhagen, they are at a disadvantage because they can't see that. So how do we solve that? We had this grand idea that we are going to solve it with the help of VR collaboration tools. So we created a 3D model of the space where people could come and collaborate. They could draw, they could kind of plan. So think about design process or design thinking process in virtual environments. Really, really interesting, but we failed. Yeah, I mean, one thing was that the technology was a bit in alpha stage, but main responsibilities on our side, because we didn't really have kind of shared language or kind of common space. We lacked the kind of mental aspect. I think like the technology is there for sure. And look at this. This is a screenshot. So, yeah, you shall not pass. During the course, when I was teaching the course, I had a longer beard, so some of them apparently called me Gandalf. That wasn't a failure, by the way, but yeah, so that was. I mean, it looks amazing, and like as an idea, but we just didn't have the infrastructure. For example, like the students, when they tried it on, they had to log in with they had to use Google, for example, and it was a mess, and only because we didn't really know what to do. So I think that's like one of the things that when I talk to fellow educators as well, everyone is keen on using VR in this kind of contexts, but we just don't know how to do that. So that's a low-hanging fruit for all VR companies. We tried documenting. This is downloadable, or you can check it out on Issu, or I can send a copy afterwards. But basically, we documented our journey. What have we been doing with VR so far? It's been super interesting, and I still want to try. But same thing, like this pain when you feel that, when you see that something is not happening or working as intended. It doesn't feel nice, but if you don't try, you just don't push anything forward, right? So lack of shared space. And this is what, like, by shared space, I mean, we never kind of understood how much it really means to start creating something, because what we are essentially doing, you're creating a new world. You are creating a new world for the students to experiment, and you have to try it out yourself many times, be on the same page. And when we are talking about cross-border collaboration, it's quite, it's a whole new ballgame in a way. Super interesting nonetheless. Yeah. So keep this in mind. Now for the last one. Actually, I don't know if it's okay to show copyrighted material, but I'm using it for teaching purposes, so then it's okay. This is an excerpt from my student's thesis. He was researching game companies in Finland, mobile game companies, small to be more precise. He was looking at, because he wanted to understand how these teams, how they collaborate, how they kind of develop their managerial or business competencies. So when you think about it, when iPhone came out, Angry Birds became widely successful and popular, everyone started talking about what's in the water in the Finnish ecosystem. There's something crazy going on. Companies are super successful. And at the same time, they were saying that this whole digital distribution has changed the business logics, so that previously developers would get 30% of the revenue, but nowadays 70%. It sounds fantastic. Think about it. You do your work, and one beautiful day someone says instead of getting 25 euros, you get 55. Who wouldn't like that? That wasn't a rhetorical question. Who would not like to have less money? No, more money for the same job. Okay. But there's a downside to that. When you think about small teams, often coming from audiovisual design, game design background, who does the business? Who takes care of the customer engagement, marketing, branding, business model, strategy? And this is what happens. Some of the companies found their game needed structural changes that would not have been financially feasible to make. Not bashing these companies, but it's just super interesting to realize that at the same time, when the market is liberating companies, you also have new responsibilities. But it doesn't look so bad. Lauri came up with this amazing DPS model, so kind of bringing together design, process, and the stakeholders. So looking at, and this is not like a super rigid template. It's more like a framework for people to start discussing within the team, how do we actually create shared language. But yeah, we have all those templates, business model canvas, value creation, value proposal, all kinds of, there's a canvas for everything. Design your life, design your shopping list, when you need to buy groceries. Recipe is a canvas in a way. This is like a canvas era in a way. But it doesn't really mean that, just because you follow templates, doesn't mean that you actually have better collaboration. Sounds pretty, no news there, right? But they are still useful when you think about how do you create a shared language. So we have one example from our program in IDBM. We used to refer, because we call ourselves multidisciplinary, but we used to call multi in the trans, and that was super confusing. But nowadays, we are moving towards a shared understanding. So this is the last takeaway. So shared language is not created overnight, but learned through embodied and systematic practices. Again, being there in the moment. And that was the last, the third act. So I have 2 slides left. So just to recap, Sampo Yoshi, this is amazing. Go and check it out on Google or your search engine of choice. I don't work for Google. And these are the takeaways. Because in the end, when you think about whether it's work or education, this is the kind of feeling we want to have when we collaborate. Thank you so much. You've been an amazing audience. This was it. Thank you.
Thank you. And can we have any questions from the audience? Anybody? Nobody, no volunteers. Oh, you've stunned them into silence. I'm afraid. Okay.
My apologies.
I perhaps have a question. What were you talking about? It's more of a personal question, like your love of failures, or what you get out of the failure. How do you compare that with then success? Which do you think is more valuable? It's a very theoretical question. Sorry.
No, that's a good one actually. So what we do also, like we do like this kind of failure CV exercise where we draw failures, and sharing failures kind of also like it helps you reflect on what you learn, but also helps establish connections. So it kind of makes you feel more relatable in a way that you also like it's not always rainbows and unicorns, and you also understand like what's the sense of direction there as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. Thanks for great presentation. So when you were talking about the failure, and then you showed like there was no result or nothing got developed, and I was thinking like maybe it needed better infrastructure, better planning, or some kind of like a framework. And I was just thinking like, yeah, it should have some kind of like template. And then you come to the next point and you say, okay, templates don't work for better collaboration. That's not always it. So the question is that what would you do differently? Now that you would do exactly the same thing, but now that you know that what the possible output could be, or you've failed already once, how would you change the exercise?
Oh, you mean the VR collaboration?
Yeah.
I guess I would do the same thing over and over again. No. I would figure out first, like, what are the VR capabilities? Like, even like really simple, like level. How many VR headsets do we have? How many of them are functioning? How many accounts do we need to set things up? Having like a roadmap or a blueprint, and then discuss that with your colleagues. Like, can we do that? What kind of value does it create for the people involved? So yeah. A bit on the template stuff, but not too much. Yeah.
Okay. If we have no other questions, actually, we are running behind, so thank you very much, Miikka.
Thank you.